All right, welcome back to Better Odds Sports Betting. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill.
And I'm Kyle Hunter.
And today
And I'm John.
Well,
sorry.
John, I was going to introduce you, man. Come on.
I thought I was following the trend. Sorry about that.
Either way, we got our guy back, Mr. John Ryan from Wager Talk Sports Memo. John, how you doing, man? Are you ready to talk again? I was just on your show. I got your feelings. I don't got Kyle's feelings yet, so I'm really excited to hear what he's got to say. But how's the day going?
It's going well, and I'm thrilled to be on this show with you guys. And as I always say, I always learn something from this show and from you guys, and I'm sure everybody in the chat room does too. So I just can't wait for the start of the games. To be honest with you, probably won't sleep much tonight. Like a kid before Christmas.
Yeah, man. I mean, you got all these player props to look into. We got baseball going on. Lots of stuff going on this weekend, horse racing and all that stuff. But we learned a ton from you, John. So don't sell yourself short there. We love your analytics.
Appreciate that.
Your methods and all of your insights. And that's why you're one of the fan favorites of us. And I'm sure many of our viewers. So thanks a lot for coming on. Well, big slate this weekend. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the lines here in these games. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple player futures that Kyle brought up that I thought was really cool, and I think there is value in at least one of them. And we're going to talk about the future lines of what could be in the NCAA championship game on Monday. So why don't we just get started with Houston versus Baylor? And you're looking at about a 5-point spread, and the total of this is 135. Well, since I know what John's going to say, Kyle, I think we got to go start with you, my man. What do you think?
I was going to say, I feel like I have to go first on this one, right? So I'm going to start off by saying, I don't see any huge line value in these games because they are the Final Four games. None of these are going to be massive plays. I mean, I know that doesn't sell as well as some of the other things. I'm not going to have some play that's your game of the year or anything like that, but let's break these games down and see if we can find a little bit of an edge here. Houston and Baylor is an interesting matchup. I feel like the other game we pretty much know who's probably going to win the game. Houston and Baylor is the one where it could ruin our final that we want, right? A lot of people want Gonzaga and Baylor in the final game. I think Houston's capable of ruining that final. Houston does it with defense. I'm a little bit burned by Houston because of how I lost my -7.5 in the last round. Getting messages about congratulations in the middle of the game when they're up like 18 or 20 points, and I'm like, no, please don't do this. And then they fall apart, and then obviously the three right at the end to beat it. But Houston is a really good defensive team. But on offense, they're a bit of a question mark. They offensively rely heavily on offensive rebounding. If you look at the offensive rebounding numbers for them, they should get some second chance points against Baylor, who is a really good offensive rebounding team, but not a great defensive rebounding team. It's one of the reasons that I'm scared to take an under. I usually like unders, in these domes, especially when the games are really important. My number is higher than this, as it is in the second game, but I don't like taking overs, so I'm not going to take the under in this one, I don't think, because the other thing is Baylor and Houston both going to get second chance points here, and both teams are pretty good at getting to the line. Houston fouls a lot, so it's going to depend on how the refs call this game. Kiev and I have talked about this a lot in the past. In the Big Ten, some of the other conferences, we've seen a lot of ref shows here this year. And I know if this one's a ref show, the under has no chance because they're going to get to the line a lot here because Houston tries to play very physical. So how physical are the refs going to let them be? I'm not sure about that. As far as the spread here in this one, I'm going to lean slightly toward Houston here. So we'll see what you guys like. But I like Houston a little bit here because their defense keeps them in the game. Kelvin Sampson has been really good as an underdog as well. I believe 14-5 against the spread in his last 19 as an underdog. I think this game will be close. I think Baylor wins this game outright, so I'm not expecting Houston to win outright. But a 5-point spread is a pretty key number. I actually also think you might get plus 5.5 at some point. So if you like Houston, I think you want to wait it out, take a chance that maybe one of the public books you get a plus 5.5. I'm going to lean Houston in this one. I want to take the under, but I'm afraid to with the offensive rebounding numbers and the fouling could be a real problem here. So slight lean toward Houston here. I'm not sure I'm going to bet this game though. So what do you guys like here?
John, let's go to you.
Well, I like Houston quite a bit. I won't sugarcoat it. I think they win. And I'm not trying to rain on the parade of Baylor playing Gonzaga, which is it'd be a fun game for me to watch as well. But I think you nailed it on the head there, Kyle. The rebounding is going to dictate who or how Houston's going to win this game. So Houston offensive rebounds per game ranks third at 13.1. And as you mentioned, Baylor's good at it too, but they actually are getting 11.1, ranking 14th. So both of them crash the boards. However, on the defensive rebounding percentage, Houston is number one in the nation at 60% of all missed shots are secured. So Houston really does a great job at limiting second chance scoring opportunities, which Baylor kind of thrives on, and they need. Defensive rebounding percentage for Baylor is 274th, and that's a concern too going up against Houston's offensive abilities. Their offensive rebounding percentage actually is best in the country at 40.1%. All right, so granted, the conference is not the Big 12 conference. However, we've seen them play enough now against higher level competition other than Memphis, for example, that they're the real deal. And I think they're flying under the radar because they come out of that conference. And if I see at the end of the first half, I think you could all look at the box score, and if it's Houston has a big edge in rebounding, like I just described, I think they go on to win. So, like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm on the Cougars.
All right, man. Well, hey, good stuff. Well, I hate to say it, but we have agreement, all three of us. I'm on the Cougars as well. And it's not like I'm way off. This is a 5-point spread. I was a little surprised it came out at 5. The books kind of did a good job foreseeing the line because it's literally at 5.5 or 5. When this thing came out, they did a fantastic job. And the thing that I look at here, I think, and I mentioned this on John's show, what does Houston do as a dog? The only time we've seen them play as a dog was against Texas Tech way back in November, and they beat them bad. There's a narrative out there, and it's like, oh, they had the easiest road, red carpet to the Final Four, and I don't disagree with that. But why should that matter? When these metric sites come out, maybe Houston did have a pretty easy non-conference and a very easy American Athletic Conference, but you have to remember that these metric sites also take the teams that they beat and how their efficiency scores did against all their opponents. It all works in, and every single efficiency site has this a pick 'em or a 1-point spread. Even Torvik's got -1 for Houston. Well, my numbers is somewhat reflective, and I do punish Houston some for being in an easy shooting conference with stats that are like fantastic against opponents, right? Number 1 effective field goal, 43.3%. Number 11 in guarding the 3, 29.2%. But at the same time, that's still high. And I can trust Grimes to keep them in this game. That's what I can kind of trust. I can trust them to try to slow it down. And I think they're going to get some success against Baylor. So my number's 3, but I also have it at the over. My real number was 138.6 or something. I think I said 138 on one podcast, 139, rounded to 139. That's my total on this. I am worried that the refs do swallow their whistles because that's what we saw throughout this tournament. The refs didn't want to make it about them, like Kyle mentioned, about how they did with the Big Ten, right? So I would be concerned that it could start out like that Nova Baylor game. But if it's a ref show, this thing's going way over because of some of the things that John mentioned. The defensive rebound is just non-existent. 30.6% of rebounds, ranking 273rd for Baylor. And actually, Houston only ranks 151 in defensive rebounds. These teams are cleaning their misses up. And Baylor's going to push the pace no matter what. Whether it works for them or not, when they pushed the pace versus Nova and Nova slowed it down, they were just missing everything. So it worked for Nova, but they eventually came back and finished. What you saw against Nova in the last 8 minutes of that game is what Baylor, I think, can do throughout this whole game. So I actually like the over, and I lean the over strongly right now, and I like Houston plus the 5. You're getting 5 points here. Plus you have options, remember. This gets to halftime. Houston's winning this game, you can do a lot of different things with your bet. You can go half Baylor up. You can go the full thing and try just for a middle anyway. I like Baylor at the end of every game they play. Maybe not against Gonzaga, but pretty much. So wouldn't be a bad idea to hedge back. But right now, it's 5 points is too much, and I do agree it's going to get to 5.5, possibly 6 points before tip-up, guys. Anything final to say about it?
I have a prop bet I want to mention here that I actually will go to the window on. I use the machine learning tools to help identify market value. So my stuff says that Houston in a win will score 71 or more points, which is also a bet to take the over team total, obviously. But better than that, the probability that Houston wins if they score 71 or more goes up dramatically. So at MGM right now, they have a prop, 70 points or more, Houston wins, plus 575. And that I'm going to put maybe 2 pizzas on that bet, because that's something I kind of like quite a bit looking at it.
Plus 575 to win it all.
Just this game. So they'll score 70 or more points against Baylor and win.
Oh, so this one. Okay. Sorry, I was missed that first part. Okay, well, that's an interesting one. So Houston scoring 70 in this game. I would wonder if Baylor scores 80. It says they're not controlling the pace if that happens. What are your thoughts on that, Kyle?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go against John. John, I respect him a lot. I will say that I think Houston would want a lower scoring game than that. I think that's what Kiev is saying as well. So, having said that, there could be fouling at the end of the game that would get it past 70 points for Houston as well. And I mean, he's talking about plus 575. So it's hard to argue with those odds. I think that's pretty good price for that.
Yeah,
I do kind of think that Houston would rather have a 63-60 game here than they would a 75-70 game. But, some of those games that have a 5 or 6 point spread at the end of the game, they can pile on 10 or 15 points in the last, minute or less. So, given those odds, I don't dislike it. But I do, I'm a little bit concerned if you think Houston's going to win, that it might not be quite as high scoring as that. So I'm somewhat indifferent on that. But, John knows his stuff, and I'll root for him on that one.
It's not bad.
I appreciate the cheers there, Kyle.
Yeah, it's going over if it's 70, so you would like the over. But and that would be your shot. I mean, another way to look at this game, maybe you take Houston in the points, and maybe for less to kind of hedge that a little bit, you take the total over. And so maybe you could hit both. I mean, like my situation, 71-68, that's what, my score says. But you're getting an extra plus 300 if they get to 70, because it's plus 185 now. So I kind of see what you're getting at there. Let's move on to the next game, then. UCLA versus Gonzaga, and it's minus 14. Total is about 145 and a half-ish. What a massive spread, guys. John, why don't you go first on this one?
Well, it's hard to go against Gonzaga. At the same time, UCLA has had one of those dream runs that I think a lot of the pros have, including myself, have bet against UCLA and have paid the price. Most recently I was on Michigan, and I would have lost a bundle if I would have had a prop bet that Michigan scores more than 50 points. I probably would have put 100 pizzas on that. To see them score 48, and to see what I was trying to figure out during the game was that why wasn't Michigan taking the open shots? Because they would get UCLA out of, with different angles to defend. So they could launch the three-pointer or get fouled. It was either going to be one or the other. And it just seemed, I never saw a team like Michigan so hesitant. And that paled in comparison to what we saw with Gonzaga's precision. I've never seen they reminded me of the San Antonio Spurs back in their day when their ball passing side to side was just, perfect. And that's why they won world championships. And I think we're seeing it again here. Gonzaga, on my math models, is showing no signs of regression, which is pretty scary when you think about it, because that last game was one of the most efficient games I think I've ever watched at such a high level of play. We're talking about the Elite Eight. We're not talking about October when they're playing some weaker teams or possibly playing a ranked team, because that's when those games are scheduled. But at the end of the day, UCLA is the team, much like Oregon State was, that is due for the regression. And if they start regressing in this game, this game will be over at halftime, just like the previous game was that Gonzaga won. There's a couple systems here too. Play on neutral court teams as a favorite in a game involving two what would be classified as average defensive teams, allowing 67 to 74 points per game. But that's a little misleading because Gonzaga plays at a pretty rapid pace, and therefore the opponents are going to score more because they are shooting more. But this is a game involving those types of defenses after 15 or more games of the regular season, and after a team like Gonzaga has scored 80 or more points in 3 consecutive games. That's 68% for 60 and 32 record over the last 5 seasons. So that includes the tournament, NIT, and any neutral court game during the regular season. Right. And that squarely is on Gonzaga.
All right. So my thoughts, on the spread itself, it's at my number. I literally have it 14. And I had to give Gonzaga a little extra because there's just been so many times their games have been statistically final. The biggest question about this is what's going to be UCLA in the second half? I don't know. Would this be one of those teams that completely give up if they're getting blown out, or do they keep scoring? And that's what scares you on the total of 145 here. I watched that USC versus Gonzaga game. It was over in the first 6 minutes. UCC was intimidated, very intimidated. And you could tell they're missing 2-foot shots. But Gonzaga, they're the only team this whole tournament that's been consistent and very confident. They're the only team that didn't have any hiccups. You could have done a spread rollover on this whole tournament and been making a killing on the Zags. So Vegas is setting a high number here. And it's about what mine is, but the efficiency sites, once again, have it a little bit lower at 12, whatever. Mick Cronin, big props to him for slowing down the game and beating Michigan and Alabama. But Michigan and Alabama had their worst games all season against UCLA, too. They couldn't hit a free throw. Franz Wagner couldn't hit a shot. So what is UCLA here? I think they're around a 5 or a 6 seed. Not an 11 seed, but they're also not a 2 or 3 seed, in my opinion. This is a monster spread, but this is a very special Gonzaga team. I lean to the over, and we had a listener, Sean. What's up, Sean? Talk a little bit about a first half team total. I really like that idea, and as soon as he did that, I started looking for it. I don't think it's out yet on all the sites. You have first half numbers, -8 Gonzaga, and the total of 69 in the first half, where I would lean strongly to the over unless UCLA successfully slows them down and Gonzaga has their hiccup. But just from a number standpoint, I definitely lean to the over. It's actually juiced to the under because first half unders have been so good. But the first half team total on Gonzaga, when that comes out, I think it would be shaded a little bit to 42, 43 points, I would guess, because their team total is 79.5. So they're going to shade it to the big favorite, thinking the favorite slows it down later. But I would still possibly take it at 42 or 43. What are your thoughts, Kyle?
So on the total first, I think if you like the over in this game, a first half over makes a lot of sense, because if Gonzaga gets way ahead like they did against USC, they have shown that they will slow it down. In the last 5-6 minutes of that game, they were using the entire clock. I've had a bad run here of late, but one of my wins was the under in that game. I feel fortunate to have won that game. Maybe I got one of my many bad beats here back, but Gonzaga is going to push the ball as much as they can in the first half. We don't know if they will in the second, because there's a very real chance that they're ahead by enough that they just want to take their foot off the gas in this game. The spread even tells us that. And if you look at the NCAA tournament in the past, spreads this big, the under's done really well. So I'm going to lean to the under for the full game, even though it's against my number. This isn't a dome. There could be some bad shooting numbers. And I do think there's a real chance that Gonzaga's ahead by quite a bit. If I was betting first half only, I'd bet the over. So, I think that you could look at it that way too. If you like the over, you like the first half over, and you might even be able to, find a middle. If you bet something on the over, or you might be able to, if you want to bet the under, wait and bet it at halftime. So I think that gives you some opportunities there, because I don't think UCLA is going to be able to push the pace. They're not going to want to push the pace. If they get way behind, it's going to be hard for them to score in bunches anyways. Gonzaga is fifth in defensive efficiency. Look, everybody knows how good their offense is, but their defense is pretty good too. The question here is, can UCLA force Gonzaga to slow down even in the first half? Because if you're Mick Cronin, you got to try a lot harder than Andy Enfield did to slow that game down, because USC did not do a good enough job of getting their pace. Gonzaga just blew them out right from the beginning. USC turning the ball over constantly on that full court zone press that Gonzaga was using. UCLA has got to get through that press and then set up, run an offense, and take their time. USC didn't do that, and that was a bad idea. They couldn't get through it and use the time. I think it would be nice to see UCLA try to do that and see how it works. Having said that, on the spread, this is a really hard spread to bet on here, because UCLA plus 14. I mean, you're supposed to want to take plus 14 in a game like this, but I don't want to take plus 14. I mean, I've seen Gonzaga enough times, and I still don't think UCLA is that good. I mean, I think they deserve a lot of credit. Like you said, Cronin's done a good job coaching up this team, but they've also been able to get other teams, Michigan and Bama and the other teams they've played, into these ugly games. Watching all of Gonzaga's games, I don't think they can get them into that same type of game. So, can UCLA keep up? I have my doubts on that one. So I have to say, I know I'm not betting the side in this game. There's no way I'm betting the side in this game. This would be my least favorite bet of all the side totals. I'm not betting the side. Like I said, I kind of lean to the full game under here. If you like an over, I like the first half over. But it's also hard to bet these games with a huge spread. And I think all of us kind of agree on Houston in the first game. This one's a hard side to bet. I'm going to slightly disagree with Kiev and lean to the under here on the full game, just because I think Gonzaga could be so far ahead in this one.
Anything, John?
Yeah, I have. I was running a little query here while you guys were talking, because I think it's pretty reasonable to expect that Gonzaga will shoot better than 50% from the field in this game and score 81 or more points, and 81 is pretty much what the line is implying. So I asked the database, how does Gonzaga do when they score 81 or more and shoot better than 50% from the field? And the answer is astounding. This is the last 10 years, 133 wins, 1 loss straight up. 87, 32, and 3 pushes for 74% against the spread. So, if you like those and you buy into that little premise that those two things are going to happen, then your side is Gonzaga, and forget that it's double digits.
Yeah. You just pretty much said don't bet UCLA. I mean, and that's the whole funny thing about it. It's like, what if they made it minus 20? I mean, where is the freaking breaking point in this number? It's a great question, because Gonzaga has that extra gear. They're the Alabama football to college basketball, I think.
Yeah.
It feels like that. So, concerned. One thing I do know is they did slow that game down against USC, and I was concerned. And you're right, Kyle. That total against USC started out really bad because UCLA had to play catch up, and you want them to control the game. But Gonzaga's awesome defense was part of the reason why it helped you cover that under. So that concerns me. But at least I have a 10-point less under, about 9 or 10 at 145. So I guess that's my rebuttal. But a first half team total over is probably the strongest thing I have, man.
Yeah, I agree with Sean on that one. I think the first half team total over makes sense, and I don't think any of us would be surprised if we see Gonzaga, way ahead at halftime with a really pretty high total, 47 or 46 or something like that. Wouldn't be shocking. And then what happens in the second half? That's the question, because UCLA is one of those track meet types teams that's going to score a bunch in the second half, and Gonzaga is a team that will slow it down if they're way ahead. So this game kind of sets itself up to be a good game to either live bet or bet first or second half here rather than the full game. I think that would make a lot of sense.
All right. Well, that's a good segue into the national championship game between UCLA and Houston, right, guys? Wait, is that not what's going to? Okay. No.
It's possible.
There's
possible.
lines out for it, though. I mean, that's the cool thing. We do have lines at Bet Online and a few other sites of what it would be. And all joking aside, Houston versus UCLA, Houston's -3. Okay. That one we probably don't have to talk much about. But if Houston and UCLA get to this point, I would think this would be the biggest letdown spot in history for UCLA. and I would have to bet Houston -3. And this is the same thing as if Baylor played UCLA. And this spread would be -8. I would still have to bet Baylor because I still have to believe that UCLA could not have made that big step up, and they just got lucky again. And maybe Gonzaga has the worst shooting game like Michigan. I tweeted out a while back, maybe UCLA or Oregon State was putting things in the Gatorade or something to make these teams so bad when they played each other. It's just amazing to watch these teams crumble. Can't shoot a free throw, can't hit easy shots, decide to keep playing the Mick Cronin pace of play. It blows my mind. But starting with those two scenarios, since they're the least likely, we don't have to spend much time on it. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if UCLA wins this game, I want to bet against them with whoever they're against. I agree with you on that, definitely. I think that even Houston -3 would be a good play in that one. That's a very unlikely game to happen. Baylor -8, obviously a little bit more tricky because you're laying so many more points, but I do still like that one a good amount because I think UCLA would be in a terrible spot. Like you said, you got Gonzaga, who's unbeaten. You just knocked off Goliath, and now you have to play another game against a team who's still better than you. So yeah. I definitely would like that. Do they have a total on these games, Kiev? Or?
Not yet, Kyle. Unfortunately, we can try to radio in and give them shame for not putting the total out for Kyle Hunter picks, but I think the total is going to come obviously afterwards. You can definitely guess what the total would be. If Houston played UCLA, it'd probably be about 126 or so. I would think. If Baylor played UCLA, I would think 134-ish, probably the same type of thing you're seeing with Houston, kind of somewhere around there. But John, before we move on to the other two scenarios, what are your thoughts on Houston versus UCLA or Baylor?
I would take Houston. You know how much I'm on Houston now. I haven't felt this strongly about a play in a while. And, full transparency, I've had a losing tournament season. First one in the last 5, it happens. And my confidence was rattled in some of those games. Like Kyle mentioned, the Houston game, they were up by, I guess it was like 22 in the second half, and then they had a fight to win and didn't cover the 7.5-point spread. And it's been, getting, bit like that even when you do it as long as we have, it can shake you up a little bit that, you just don't want to keep being the fire hydrant, and you want to be the dog. So now I kind of feel like I'm the dog this weekend, and I do, anything can happen. I'll make that caveat right now, but I do feel pretty confident that Houston wins and advances against Gonzaga. They'll probably be about a 7.5-point underdog, and I just might take Houston again.
Okay, so if Baylor is laying 8 points against UCLA, would you lay it with Baylor then?
I would take Baylor for sure.
Okay. Well, let's move on to that scenario then. Houston versus Gonzaga, which would be the second most likely scenario, I would think. And Bet Online has Gonzaga -9. And, it's so funny. It's like you see Baylor versus Gonzaga at -6, and then you see Houston versus the Zags at -9. Well, why is Baylor 5-6 point spread here? If this one's 3, why are they 5? It makes no sense to me, but it's also telling you that maybe Houston's the right side in our game, guys. Wink, wink. But Houston. good luck to them. I still wouldn't bet them against the Zags. Sorry, John. I think you might, but what are your thoughts?
And it's not because I don't like Gonzaga. I think they're an incredible team, and I have nothing against them. I just think that the fact that I said they would be like 7.5 point favorites, and it's at 9, reflects that the anticipation that the public will be all over Gonzaga if that should happen. Not so much if Baylor advances, because everybody wanted to see that matchup. They're number 2 in the country just about the whole year. So it's 1 against 2. I think that would have more balanced flows, but I think the book there is reflecting an anticipation of just a gauntlet of Gonzaga money coming in that now Gonzaga's in that realm where they can't lose.
Well, I think it's a little short, though. I'm on the other side. I think that should be. According to what the market's saying right now, I think they're giving Houston 2 or 3 points of credit for beating
versus
Baylor.
Now.
Yeah, versus the line now. So they're really upgrading Houston 2 or 3 points just for beating Baylor, which is a huge upgrade. So that I disagree with that much. I definitely disagree with that from a 1-game sample size for sure. So Kyle, what are your thoughts on the -9?
Well, I think that there's a good chance it'd be bigger than that once the public got a hold of that game. I think, if you like Houston and you get that game, you probably get double digits. I think that could really happen unless Gonzaga plays a game where, they struggle against UCLA and it's a tight game and Houston wins in impressive fashion. But I have to say that, I would lean Houston and the points against Gonzaga. I would like the under better than that, I believe. This is not, it's kind of hard, having not seen the game before it. Obviously, we're trying to project out what the line will be. And this time of the year, what the team just did matters a lot to the line. So, if somebody looks great on Saturday, it could change these lines quite a bit. But I would want to play the under with Houston and Gonzaga. I think Houston would try really hard to keep that low scoring. Houston's one of the best defenses Gonzaga would have faced. So under would be my favorite in that matchup.
All right, well, there you go, and that's a good point. At least Houston has great ball pressure, right? And that could fluster Suggs up a little bit in Kispert, but they move the ball so efficiently it usually tires the other team out. So, that's just Gonzaga. So for me, on the -9, I would probably that's probably really close to what my number would be. I would predict the line's going to be about 11. And so I would probably play the -9 just for line value and decide if I want to come back, because I think it moves over 2 or 3 points, which is where you're getting into the positive EV to try to middle about 2 or 3 points here. I think you could go to 12 or 13 because, UCLA is 14 right now. So the perception on UCLA is so high. That's my lean on that one. Let's move on to the final one, Baylor versus the Zags, -6. And I'll tell you right now, I think I like Gonzaga at -6 here against Baylor because that's the lowest spread you're going to see in a Gonzaga game. And this could be just one of those situations where Baylor's running, but they keep getting in trouble because Gonzaga plays fast and Gonzaga's going to have more ability to get margin. I also lean over. This is going to be a pretty high total, probably about 157, maybe. I think something like that, Kyle. So my opinion would be, and I might just bet this because if it doesn't happen, it's not going to give you. But I think that line closes at 8 minimum. But I also still like the Zags all the way up to probably 8.5-ish against Baylor, just from what I saw. Kyle, what are your thoughts? Why don't you go?
Yeah, I think that total would be, 155.5, 156, somewhere in that range. Pretty close to what you said. They don't set the total quite as high when it gets this deep into the tournament, so you have to adjust down whatever numbers you have. I think I would be afraid of playing an over there, Kiev. Just in that important of a game at that high of a total.
Right.
I wouldn't be excited to bet an under either, though. So I do like Gonzaga minus the points like you do in that one. -6, I think, is a pretty decent price there. Gonzaga is better than Baylor is at most things. And like John said earlier, I think it was a good example to say they kind of look like the Spurs. They really have excellent ball movement. You watch a game of Gonzaga's, they move the ball really quickly. And part of the reason they're so good in transition is they don't just dribble it up court, they pass it up court as fast as they can. They're really quick passes. Those are tough to guard. Everybody has some trouble with that. I think that this is one where I would rather lay the points with Gonzaga, and I think -6 is a pretty fair price.
John?
What did you have the total estimated to be for this game?
Kyle said 156. I said 157. But I do agree with Kyle. I think he's more right on this because I think national championship games always go to the under anyway. I think there's a good stat on that. When it be conference championships or NCAA tournament, I think it always. I think and maybe you can check this, Kyle. But I think the under hits better.
Yeah.
So
it does.
so 150. I'm going to go with 155 and a half, 156 with what Kyle said.
Well, that implies that, again, Gonzaga is going to score more than 81. And when they score more than 81, you heard what it's like. And to score more than 81, you're probably shooting better than 50%. And that statistic always resonates in my head with teams like that. Similar like some of the stats that apply to some of the teams in the NFL, even like the Patriots and their run with all the Super Bowls. And when teams do something. An Oklahoma Sooner in college football, they score more than 28 points in a game. It truly doesn't matter what the line is. They do really well against the spread. And I think in this situation, the only way Baylor is going to beat them is in a high-scoring game. And I don't see it being anything but. And that just feeds right into the fire of what Gonzaga does best. Baylor misses a shot. You can bet that Gonzaga is going to be running, like they do. Every missed shot, they are going to look to score within a few seconds.
That's why I like the Houston side more if this happens, where it'd be at a +11. Even though I said I'd take -9, I would consider coming back. Remember I said that. I actually like the Houston situation better than Baylor against Gonzaga, because of the defense and the pace of play. So I do agree with that. And I'm not sure if I would want to bet it because look at the Zags, but there you go.
It's pretty interesting you just said that because think about it, you're getting 11 with Houston and they're the team that actually matches up better to possibly knock them off. And Baylor's only going to be, I think you said 6. So that's a real good point. That kind of sums it up.
Well, I think they match up better, but we have the number 1 3-point team in the nation in Baylor. So imagine if they go nuts from there. That would sure make a high-scoring, crazy game. But it's always to see what the refs come up with. But we pounded the heck out of that. Kyle came up with a couple great future odds that I don't normally look at, Kyle. And it was you found these on both DraftKings and FanDuel, and I looked at a couple offshores, and they have it as well. Why don't you let us know what these odds are and what they're about?
Yeah, so what I was looking at is the most outstanding player odds here for the Final Four. So, what we're looking at here is who's going to be named the player of the Final Four, the top player. So we want somebody that's going to have a really good performance. So Gonzaga is -200 or higher. Excuse me, to win this tournament at this point. So you have to think Gonzaga has a decent chance here. Drew Timme is the big favorite here, but I think that's partially because of how well he just played in the last game. So I want to go against that recency bias and try to bet someone else at good odds here. I think Jalen Suggs is the right guy here. FanDuel is +850, 870, something like that. I don't have it open right now.
It's a +850.
+850. A lot of other places are +500 or so, which I still think +500 is not a bad price. I think you could make an argument that Jalen Suggs is the most important player to the Gonzaga team. In fact, I think that's the case. Suggs is excellent defensively and offensively. He's a guy that I think if you take him away from the team, it hurts them the most of anybody. Timme just had an amazing game last game, so everybody wants to bet Timme because of what they just saw. Suggs is an excellent overall player. I think he's very capable of carrying them through these last couple games. I think if you like Gonzaga to win the national title, you try to find somebody like either Suggs or Kispert, someone like that, at odds that are pretty favorable, and you take them because who wants to lay -230 on the Zags winning this thing outright? I think there's a good chance that Gonzaga will win this, so I'd rather take something like Suggs at +550 or +850, obviously, if you have FanDuel. But I think that's a pretty good look as far as the value play because I think, like I said, it's going against the recency bias that favors Drew Timme so heavily.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I think Suggs is definitely the best value, especially at FanDuel. I mean, if you have FanDuel, I'm playing at plus 850. Because Zags are most likely winning here, and he's the point guard. I mean, that's very important. He leads in assists. And it's not like he doesn't score a ton of points. He's third in points, but all he has to do is be the second or third, probably the second highest scorer. I would say Timmy's usually the highest scorer, and Kispert's second if he's hitting his shots. But there's going to be opportunities for Suggs to get that, and it's just such a big difference when you got Timmy at minus 110 in some books, plus 240 on FanDuel, and he's all the way up to plus 850. I think there's great value there. I actually think the line should be about plus 300, plus 350 on this. So 100% good find, Kyle. What are your thoughts, John?
I'm looking at the list here, and I can't find a player that I like better than Suggs, and that's a really good breakdown and identification. Because in these futures, you can get lucky and take the favorite in one particular championship game. Even in the Super Bowls, the quarterbacks are always the favorite, and that could work. But as a professional bettor, you want to identify value and opportunity. Where you're getting paid to assume the risk of the bet. And I think Kyle's bet here on Suggs is a really strong one.
Yeah, and what I will say is it feels like Drew Timme is the public one, Corey Kispert's the sexy one, and Jalen Suggs feels like the sharper one, because he's controls the game more than those. So loving what you guys found there. So fantastic. Well, guys, we're about the end of time here. Is there anything else that we want to throw out there before we close out? John?
Well, I really appreciate having me on the show here for the NCAA stuff, and now we'll have that little lull, but I'm sure we'll connect. And I'm interested in horse racing, and you're pretty darn good at that from what I understand, and from others saying that you're really good at it. And I don't know what I'm doing with horse racing. I'll totally honest. I go with the name of the horse, and of course I think I'm looking for value. So I bet the Triple Crown, and that's about the extent of it.
I follow it not as religiously as real horse bettors. I mean, I do it a little bit throughout the winter months. I really start getting into it now. So my research has kind of started a couple days ago, more or less. I didn't even bet the Florida Derby. I mean, we have 3 big races this weekend, so thank you. We'll chat a little bit more about that. But where could the viewers find your great information for this weekend?
Well, I'm over at sportsmemo.com, and I'm going to have some packages up at a vastly discounted price for Major League Baseball, which, because it's a 162 game marathon, has been the biggest moneymaker for me the last several years. So I highly recommend giving me a chance on that, and that's really about it. Just after this is over, then we got the NBA. And it's just a great time of the year now.
All right, Kyle, where could our listeners find your stuff?
So you can check out huntersportsfix.com for my premium packages. Baseball underway. I'll have plenty of baseball plays coming out. NBA, getting into the main part of the season. We still have these couple games here left in the college basketball tournament as well. We'll certainly look forward to that championship game on Monday night. I will say that don't count on me to have any really great thoughts on horse racing. So when we circle back here, I'm kind of hoping that if you're expecting me to have anything sharp, we better talk about something like baseball or NBA playoffs or something. We'll let Kiev be the horse racing guy. But I'm looking forward to it. It's a long season in college hoops. I love college hoops, but it's also going to be kind of nice to have a bit of a break and have the nicer weather. Where John and I aren't quite as fortunate as Kiev. We don't have the 90-degree weather right now. I woke up to 16 this morning, so I'm looking forward to the shorts and t-shirt weather and the summertime. But guys, it's been a blast chatting with you through all these videos, and appreciate all the viewers tuning in, and we'll still try to get some winning information out for the sports to come as well.
Yes, absolutely. Kyle and I will have some shows sprinkled in. John will be our guest, of course, many times throughout the summer. We're going to do some solo stuff as well. And so, please tune in for that. We always try to tweet you ahead of times if that's going to happen. But we're going to do some baseball free plays on here. We're going to do some football futures possibly. And I get into the futures market pretty big. And we had a successful NFL season win totals last year. And, as long as we get the number of games, which we think we will, it's going to be another successful year as well. So I'm very excited about getting into that with you both as well. But great shout out to the listeners and the viewers. Thank you guys for listening and being with us and giving us questions and watching this and helping us promote our pages and just being there for us. It's all about doing this for you guys, really. It's fun and it's my hobby that's become more than a hobby a couple years ago, and I love it. And so thank you for that. And if you want to check us out at the Odds Breakers, we always have free plays for you. If you ever want to support us, that's when you get into our premium plays, which you'll get throughout the whole year. So Kiev O'Neill signing out here. Guys, thanks again once. And remember to go get some winners.